When you work night shifts at a hospital, you get used to strange noises. Gurneys creaking, patients calling out in their sleep, machines humming through the walls. Most of it blends into the background after a while. But one night, I started hearing movement from a floor that was supposed to be empty. And what I found up there made me question everything I thought I knew about hospital security. I was a third-shift custodian at a mid-sized hospital in Indiana. Not a nurse, not a tech, just the guy with the mop. I worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., mostly cleaning floors, emptying bio bins, and disinfecting common areas. The hospital wasn't huge, 6 floors, 2 of them administrative, 1 shut down for renovations. That last part is important. The 5th floor had been closed for nearly a year, while they did asbestos removal and rewiring. No patients, no staff, no lights, no reason for anyone to be up there. There were even signs taped to the elevator doors. Floor 5 closed and no access. The elevator wouldn't even stop there unless you had a supervisor's override card. Same thing with the stairwells, locked from both sides unless you had badge clearance. I never thought much about it. The 5th floor just became one of those blank spots in the building, something you walked past without thinking. Until one night, I realized someone was walking around up there. It was a Monday night in February. Quiet, snowy outside, barely any visitors. I was doing my usual sweep, mopped the ER lobby, wiped down the main elevators, emptied trash in the surgical prep areas. Around 2:15 a.m., I stopped by the break room to grab a coffee and sat by the vending machines near the elevators. That's when I heard it, a thud, directly above me. It wasn't loud, but it wasn't subtle either. The kind of solid, deliberate noise you get when someone moves a chair or drops something heavy. I froze for a second. The only floor directly above me was 5, the floor that was supposed to be empty. I looked at the elevator panel. Nothing lit up. No floor calls. No movement. Maybe it came from the 6th floor. The admin offices? But that didn't make sense. Admin was always locked after 10 p.m., and security would have told me if someone was working late. I chalked it up to heating ducts or structural noise and went back to work. About 20 minutes later, I was cleaning the stairwell at the east end of the building. That's when I heard it again, this time louder. Footsteps. Above me. Slow, heavy, deliberate footsteps on tile. No voices. No equipment carts. Just the unmistakable sound of someone walking. I opened the stairwell door, stepped in, and looked up the staircase. The overhead light on the landing above was on. It shouldn't have been. Those lights are motion triggered, only come on when someone walks through. And again, the 5th floor is supposed to be locked. Curious and a little creeped out, I walked up the stairs to the door. I expected it to be locked like always, but it wasn't. It clicked and pushed open easily. The hallway beyond was dark except for one flickering light near the nurse's station. It was cold, colder than the rest of the hospital. Dry. Still. I stepped inside. The floor was mostly empty. Plastic tarps hanging from the ceiling, wires snaking across the tile, some of the walls stripped to drywall. The air smelled like dust and old chemicals. I walked a few feet forward. That's when I saw the wheelchair. It was just sitting there, perfectly centered in the hallway, facing the stairwell I had just exited. And in the seat was a clipboard. I picked it up slowly. It was an old patient chart, dated 2020. No name, no ID number. Just a note scribbled in shaky handwriting across the top. Room 524, do not move. There was no room 524 anymore. I knew that because the rooms on this floor had been torn apart, the plaques removed. Just raw door frames and empty drywall. Still, I walked further down the hall. As I turned the corner, I noticed something scratched into the wall near the last door. I can hear you. I backed away. My skin was buzzing. Something about the silence didn't feel normal. It wasn't peaceful, it was charged. That's when I heard the elevator ding behind me. The elevator wasn't supposed to stop on this floor. I turned. The doors slid open, but no one stepped out. I should have run, but instead I stepped closer, hoping to see if maybe it was just a mechanical glitch. The elevator was empty, except for one thing. Lying on the floor was a single hospital ID badge. I picked it up. It belonged to a former staff member, someone I recognized from old bulletin boards in the custodial office. A guy named Carlem. He'd been fired 2 years earlier for security violations. Rumors said he'd been caught sleeping in supply closets, sneaking into off-limits areas. No one had seen him since. Why was his badge on this floor? The overhead lights flickered again, and this time I heard running. Not from the elevator, from down the hall. Fast footsteps slapping the tile. I turned and sprinted toward the stairwell. I didn't look back. I slammed through the stairwell door and flew down 2 flights before stopping to catch my breath. When I reached the security office, I reported everything. The badge, the open floor, the footsteps. They pulled the camera logs. Elevator footage showed the doors open on floor 5. But no one got in. No one got out. They sent someone up. When they checked the hallway, the wheelchair was gone. And so was the badge. The next morning, I came back to file a formal report. The day supervisor was polite, but clearly annoyed. He said the 5th floor was being used for equipment storage now, and that I had probably stumbled into a locked area someone forgot to resecure. But the ID badge? He didn't have an answer for that. I asked if Carl M. was still in the system. He pulled up his name. Terminated in 2021. No forwarding address. No new employer listed. Probably moved out of state, he said. That didn't explain why his badge worked on the 5th floor door, or how the lights came on, or how the elevator opened when no one called it. 2 weeks later, I was reassigned to another wing. One of the nurses pulled me aside and told me something odd. She said a few of her co-workers had heard footsteps above them late at night. The same hallway, same time. They thought it was security doing checks, but security never logged it. Then she said something that really got to me. "There's no room 524, she whispered. Never was. Our floors don't go up that high. I never worked a full overnight again. I switched to daytime cleaning, bright lights, busy halls, constant noise. But I still think about that floor. The one that was supposed to be empty. Because someone was up there that night. And I don't think they were trying to scare me. I think I walked in on something I wasn't supposed to see. And whoever was up there had been waiting a long time for someone to find them." Before we proceed, please let us know where you're from. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel and be a part of our small community. Let's continue. Most people assume nothing ever happens during a night shift at a rural gas station. It's just coffee, cigarettes, and the occasional drunk asking for directions. That's what I thought too, until I worked alone one night and realized I wasn't as alone as I believed. I kept hearing pump number 4 activate even though no cars ever pulled in. What's worse, the receipts it printed weren't blank. They had items I never sold, and time stamps for minutes I never remembered. In 2022, I was working 3rd shift at a 24-hour gas station just off a back road in Missouri. It wasn't much, one of those places with a tiny convenience store for pumps out front and a dimly lit parking lot. It sat right between a highway exit and a residential patch with maybe 24 homes. The area was quiet, especially after midnight. Honestly, the job was easy. Lock the bathrooms every few hours, restock the fridges, and keep the coffee fresh for the truckers rolling in around 4 or 5 a.m. Most nights, I barely saw more than 6 customers between midnight and 6 a.m. After the regulars, a nurse on her way to the ER, a school bus driver grabbing an early breakfast sandwich. The station would get so quiet you could hear the hum of the fridges and the buzzing from the fluorescent lights. The manager liked to keep the security monitors rolling even when we didn't need them. So the only company I had some nights was the flickering black and white screens showing the pumps, aisles, and back lot. I was used to the silence, until the silence started lying to me. It started on a Thursday night in late September. The air was getting cooler, and you could feel fall settling in. It was around 2:30 a.m., and I was leaning against the counter, half watching an old movie playing on my phone, half monitoring the security feed. That's when I heard the ding. You know that bell sound when someone lifts a pump handle? That's what I heard. I looked up at the screen. Pump number 4. I scanned the feed. There was no car at the pump. Just the empty concrete island lit up under the flickering pole light. I assumed it was a glitch. Old system. I'd seen the bell go off before when the wind knocked the pump hoses around. But I checked the register screen out of habit anyway. And sure enough, the POS system showed a transaction was starting. I stepped outside. The air was cold and still. No breeze. No movement. I checked the pump. The handle was lifted, card reader blinking, but no one around, and no car lights disappearing into the road either. I hung the handle back up and went inside. As soon as I stepped back behind the counter, the register dinged again. A receipt printed out. It listed a $30 charge, cash, for pump number 4. I blinked at the slip in my hand. There were no cars, no footsteps, no sounds but mine. I tore off the receipt and tossed it. Probably a system error, I figured. That pump had always been a little sensitive. But then it happened again the next night. This time at 1:48 a.m., same pump. Same sound. Same nothing on camera. And again, a printed receipt. This one showed a $25 charge, but the line under the fuel charge listed bathroom key returned. That didn't make any sense. We didn't even print bathroom key returns on receipts. The keys were on chains. No digital system tracked them. I walked toward the back wall, where we kept the bathroom keys hanging on S. One was missing. The men's room key. I had locked both doors hours earlier and hadn't given a key to anyone since 10 p.m. I walked back to the restroom hallway and pushed open the men's room door with my backup key. It was empty, except the paper towel dispenser was open, like someone had tampered with it. And lying on the edge of the sink was a crumpled receipt. Not printed by our system. It was handwritten, scribbled in red ink. It's still my shift. I backed out of the restroom slowly, my stomach cold. I walked straight to the counter and hit the panic alert, a little strip under the till that sent a silent notification to the sheriff's office. Then I locked the front doors and turned the monitor to review the past hour of footage from pump number 4. What I saw made my chest tighten. At exactly 1:48 a.m., the pump activated. But before it did, about 30 seconds earlier, a figure stepped into frame. Just a shape, barely lit under the weak floodlight. No car, no sound, no approach. He came from the side of the lot, where there was nothing but woods and an old service road. He stood at the pump, looking toward the store. But the camera caught no face. Just a blur, like the motion sensor had failed to focus. Then, in one single jerky motion, he lifted the pump handle, stared toward the glass doors, and walked away, right back into the woods. When I paused the feed, the timestamp read 1 hour and 48 minutes. I checked the receipt again. It also said 1:48 a.m., but the year was wrong. It said September 29th, 2017, exactly 5 years earlier. And next to the date, written faintly in pen, 3rd shift, Dave M. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. Dave M. was the employee who used to work this exact shift before me. I'd seen his old time cards in the drawer. I'd even used his labeled hoodie once, left behind in the back closet. I never met him. He disappeared before I was hired. Manager told me he walked off the job one night and never came back. The cops came 20 minutes later. 2 deputies swept the building, the restrooms, even the tree line behind the station. Nothing. No footprints, no signs of trespassing, no break-in. I showed them the footage, but the copy I saved on the system? Corrupted. Only static between 1:45 and 1:49 a.m. I showed them the crumpled receipt, the one with Dave's name. They bagged it, promised to follow up. A few days later, the owner came in. I asked him again about Dave. He got real quiet. Said Dave had worked that shift for almost 4 years, never missed a night, until one morning they found the front doors still locked, the coffee half made, and the men's room key missing. They checked the pumps and saw pump number 4 activated that night. Surveillance? Same thing. Static. The cops figured he quit and left through the woods, maybe ran off with someone. But no one ever found him. Not his car. Not his phone. Nothing. I stopped working night shifts after that. The station still runs 24/7. I drive by sometimes on my way home from the evening shift. Every once in a while, I glance at pump number 4. Sometimes the handle is hanging loose. Sometimes the light over that pump flickers even when the others don't. And once, just once, I saw a figure standing at the edge of the woods. No car, no bag, just standing still. I didn't stop, because if what I saw that night was real, then maybe Dave never left. Maybe he still thinks he's on the clock. And maybe pump number 4 is still part of his shift. You'd think cleaning a movie theater after hours would be peaceful, Quiet halls, dark screens, and leftover popcorn. What could go wrong, right? That's what I thought too, until a few months ago when I picked up the overnight shift at a historic theater just outside of Springfield. The job was simple: clean up after the last movie, check the back exits, clock out. But something happened during one of those nights, something I still can't explain without my hands shaking. I started working at the Maplewood Theater in February. It's an old-school movie house, built in the 40s, with red velvet curtains, ornate ceiling tiles, and those stiff, springy seats that practically launch you forward when you try to get up. They mostly play indie films, old classics, and the occasional blockbuster. The place closes around midnight, and by 12:30 a.m., it's just me, the mop, and the hum of the vending machines. I usually finish everything by 3 a.m. I'd plug in my earbuds, crank up a podcast, and zone out while I swept through each auditorium. The job was easy money. My boss, Lorraine, was cool with me working solo as long as I stuck to the checklist. Sweep each theater, wipe down the seats and handrails, take out trash, and make sure all doors were locked. I didn't mind being alone. Actually, I liked it. No customers, no co-workers, just quiet. Theaters can feel kind of eerie at night, sure, but that's just the way sound bounces in the dark. That's what I kept telling myself anyway. The night everything went sideways was a Thursday. We had shown some art film I didn't recognize, and the last screening ended around 11:45. I got there at midnight sharp like always. Lorraine had already left, but she texted me the box office was short-staffed, so I'd need to check the side emergency exits too. I started in Theater 3. Nothing out of the ordinary, just the usual mess. Popcorn on the floor, a soda bottle rolled under one of the back rows. I finished that room quick and moved on to Theater 2, then Theater 1. It was around 1:30 a.m. when I took my first break. I sat in the lobby by the concession stand, sipping a bottle of water, when I thought I heard something. It sounded like footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from Theater 4, which I hadn't cleaned yet. Now, I'm not one to freak out easily, but it made me pause. I turned off my podcast, stood still, and waited. Nothing. I told myself maybe someone forgot to lock the side door, and a homeless guy wandered in. It wouldn't be the first time. So I grabbed my flashlight and went into Theater 4. As soon as I stepped inside, I got this weird pressure in my chest, like the air was thicker somehow. I swept the beam across the seats row by row. Empty. No movement. I walked all the way down to the screen, turned around, and faced the rows again. That's when I noticed it. One of the seats in the far back was down. You know how they pop back up when no one's sitting in them? This one was down, like someone had just gotten up, or hadn't. I climbed the stairs to the back row, slow and quiet. I got to the seat and touched it. Warm. Not hot, but not cold either. I shined my flashlight all around. Still empty. I felt watched. Not just watched, scrutinized. Like someone was behind me, staring holes through my skull. I spun around. Nothing. Just empty rows and a faint flicker of the screen still on pause from the last movie. That's when I heard a loud slam from the lobby. I bolted out of Theater 4 and ran into the hall. One of the mop buckets had tipped over, water spilling everywhere. The weird thing is, I hadn't brought that bucket out yet. It was still in the janitor closet. Something was off. I felt it in my gut. I opened the janitor closet to check. Everything inside looked fine, until I noticed the old mirror on the back wall. The glass was fogged up, like someone had breathed on it, and there was something written on it in the fog. Just one word: stay. I took a step back. My hand was shaking now, but I checked my phone. No calls. No messages. I almost texted Lorraine, but stopped myself. What would I even say? I told myself someone was messing with me. Maybe one of the part-timers who knew I worked alone. Maybe they slipped in through the fire exit. So I did what I had to. I walked to each of the 3 emergency exits and double-checked the locks. That's when I found the rear hallway light was off. I'd never seen it off before. It's motion sensor controlled, and I always trip it when I walk back there. This time I walked through the whole hallway, and the light never came on. I tried waving my arms, jumping, stomping. Nothing. It was pitch black. So I pulled out my phone flashlight. That's when I saw it. At the far end of the hallway. Just barely visible, something moved. Just an inch, like it stepped backward into the dark. Not fast. Just slow. Like it didn't care if I saw it. I froze. Then I heard it again, footsteps, bare feet slapping quietly against linoleum. I backed out of the hallway. Fast. I slammed the door shut and locked it from my side, heart pounding like a war drum. I wasn't dealing with some kid pulling a prank anymore. This felt wrong. Heavy. Like I'd stepped into something I shouldn't have. The theater was dead silent now. Not even the vending machines were humming. Then every auditorium door creaked open. One after another. No wind. No pressure change. Just a slow, deliberate creak from all four theaters, like they were inviting me back in. I didn't move. I stood there in the lobby, too afraid to breathe. Then I saw someone in theater 2. Just a silhouette standing at the top row. I called out, "Hey, you can't be in here." It didn't move. I stepped forward, flashlight in hand, but as soon as I crossed the threshold of theater 2, the emergency lights flickered, and the figure was gone. I turned around, and saw someone standing in theater 1 now. Top row again. I backed away, trying not to lose it. I went to the main office to grab the landline and call the cops. But the line was dead. The breaker panel was in the basement. So like an idiot, I went down there. The stairs creaked like hell. That part of the theater always smelled like mildew and old film reels. I hated going down there, even before this night. As I reached the bottom, I heard breathing. Not mine. Not close, but not far either. I got to the breaker and flicked all the switches off, then back on. When I turned around, I saw someone crouching in the shadows, halfway behind a stack of boxes. Their back was to me. Pale skin, hunched posture, not moving. I didn't say a word. I sprinted up the stairs and didn't look back. I waited outside until dawn, locked my car doors, engine running the whole time. I watched the building through the windshield, half expecting someone, or something, to walk out and wave at me. No one ever did. When Lorraine came in at 7, I told her everything. She laughed at first, until she saw the writing on the mirror. It was still there, even though the glass was dry now. You'd have to scrub it with Windex to get it off. She pulled up the security footage. That's when her face went pale. I couldn't see it. She wouldn't let me, but she said I never entered Theater 4 that night. Not once. Said I walked up to the hallway, and then just froze there. For 7 minutes. Then walked straight into the basement. 7 minutes. Just standing there, staring into the dark. I quit that morning. Haven't been back since. I still don't know what I saw, or if I saw anything at all. But sometimes, when I sit in a theater now, even just to watch a movie, I get this creeping sensation down my spine. Like someone's in the back row, just out of sight, watching me, waiting. And I always check the mirror in the bathroom before I leave. Just to make sure nothing's written there. Just to make sure I'm still alone. It's strange how silence can be louder than noise when you're alone in a place that was never meant to be empty. I found that out the hard way when I was assigned night duty at an office building that had been closed for renovation. Just me, a couple of industrial lights, and thousands of square feet of stripped-down workspace. I thought it would be boring. I never thought I'd walk out of there questioning what I saw, or what was real. The building was a 6-story office complex in the middle of town, built sometime in the 80s. My company handled security and overnight maintenance for places under renovation. I'd only been with them a few months when they gave me this assignment. 1 week solo shifts from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. while construction crews took the week off. The job was straightforward. Patrol each floor twice, make sure none of the contractors left anything running, and keep an eye on the equipment stored in the basement. There was no electricity on the upper floors except for the emergency lights. The water was shut off too. Most of the furniture had already been hauled out, leaving bare floors and open cubicles. The first night was creepy but manageable. I set up a small table in the front lobby with a folding chair, a thermos of coffee, and my phone charger plugged into the only working outlet. For the most part, I just walked loops through empty corridors, listening to the echo of my own footsteps. The second night is when things got weird. It started with a flickering light. Around midnight, I was finishing my second walkthrough when I noticed one of the hallway emergency lights on the 4th floor blinking in a slow, rhythmic pattern. That wouldn't be strange in any other building. But here, all the lights were battery-powered LEDs, designed to stay solid until the battery died. No flickering, no fading. I walked down the hallway, expecting to see a dying battery or maybe faulty wiring. Instead, the light stopped flickering the second I got close. Clicked right back to steady. I stood under it for a while waiting. Nothing. I turned to head back down the stairs and heard something that made me stop cold. A metallic dragging sound, long and slow, coming from somewhere near the center of the floor. I thought maybe one of the workers had left a dolly behind and it shifted. Or maybe something fell. I followed the sound, stepping carefully down the main corridor. It was open concept, and I could see all the way to the far windows. No movement, nothing out of place. But I noticed something strange. Near the center of the room, there was a set of fresh footprints in the dust, deep boot prints, like someone had just walked through. They weren't mine. I was wearing sneakers. These were larger, heavier, and they weren't going toward the stairs. They were coming from the back wall. Now, this wall had a glass panel that looked into a small conference room. The glass was dirty, fogged from dust and fingerprints. I looked inside and saw nothing, but the boot prints led straight to the door. The weird part? There were no prints going out, just in. I opened the door slowly, flashlight raised. Empty. I backed out quickly and called my supervisor. No answer. I didn't want to sound like a paranoid rookie, so I decided to check the security camera feed. There were a few working cameras on the first and second floors, all linked to a dusty monitor in the lobby. I ran down and scrolled through the feeds. Nothing. No one had come in. No movement on the stairwells. The motion detector logs were blank. I chalked it up to maybe one of the contractors sneaking in after hours, maybe a foreman checking on equipment. Still, I wrote it up in my report. The next night, I came in with a heavier flashlight and a small can of pepper spray, just in case. Around 2 a.m., I was on the third floor when I saw something that made my stomach turn. A chair was sitting in the middle of the hallway. Now, that might not sound scary, but I knew that chair hadn't been there before. It was one of those heavy-duty steel chairs used in break rooms. There were maybe 3 left in the whole building, and I remembered seeing this exact one in the break room at the far end of the 6th floor. I hadn't even done my 6th floor sweep yet. I walked over to the chair, half expecting someone to jump out from behind it. Nothing. It was just there. I walked back to the stairwell and decided to go straight up to the 6th floor. When I got up there, the break room door was open, and every single cabinet was swinging. They were moving slowly, like someone had opened them all at once, and they were just now settling. The overhead light, the one emergency light, was off. I stood there, shining my beam inside. Then I heard a loud bang downstairs. It sounded like metal hitting concrete, like something heavy had fallen in the basement. I almost left right then and there. Against every ounce of better judgment, I went down to the basement. The stairs creaked under me. The air got colder with each step. The basement was huge, half storage, half maintenance room. The only working light was at the top of the stairs, so the rest of the space was a dark maze of shelves, boxes, and scattered tools. I walked forward slowly, flashlight scanning the room. Then I saw it. A ladder had tipped over in the back corner, right next to the electrical panel. That must have been the sound I heard. I started walking toward it when I felt it again, that sense of being watched. Not paranoia, not nerves, real, skin-prickling awareness. Then something darted past the edge of my light. I whipped around. Nothing. Just shadows. I scanned the room again. That's when I saw the door. A small maintenance door on the far wall that hadn't been opened before. It was cracked now, just enough to show darkness beyond it. I didn't remember seeing it in any of the blueprints or orientation. I stepped toward it. There were footprints again. Same heavy boots going into the doorway. No prints coming out. I stood at the edge, staring inside. It was pitch black. I shined my flashlight inside, but the beam seemed to get swallowed up by the dark, like the walls didn't reflect anything back. Then I heard something breathing. Deep. Slow. Wet. I slammed the door shut and backed away fast. As I turned to run, something scraped the concrete behind me. Metal on stone. I didn't look back. I ran up all 6 flights without stopping. Locked myself in the first floor security room and stayed there until sunrise. I didn't do any more rounds. Didn't move. Just sat in the chair with my back to the wall and my flashlight clutched in my hand. When the day shift arrived, I handed over the key and said I wasn't coming back. The manager didn't ask questions. just looked at me with a tight-lipped nod like maybe he understood more than he was letting on. A few weeks later, I was at a supply depot picking up my last paycheck when I ran into one of the guys who used to do HVAC installs at the same building. I asked him if he ever noticed anything weird during the job. He hesitated, then said, "We weren't allowed in the basement after day 2. Boss said there was a gas leak, but no one smelled anything." A guy from my crew said he saw someone down there late at night, someone with no badge, just standing in the dark, not answering. I asked him about the maintenance door. He frowned. "There's no extra door in the basement, just the electrical room." I never went back. I still drive past that building sometimes, and it's still under renovation. Always under renovation. Years later, the windows are covered, but every now and then, when I pass by late at night, I swear I see a light flicker on one of the upper floors. Just for a second, like someone's still in there, waiting. I was working nights at Oak Ridge Memorial, a mid-sized hospital with an older east wing that housed the morgue, pathology lab, and basement-level mechanical systems. I came in at 10 p.m. and clocked out by 6 a.m. It wasn't glamorous work, mostly organizing paperwork, logging incoming cases, helping prep autopsies for the following day, and maintaining chain of custody on bodies stored in refrigeration. The morgue itself was a small, tiled room with 4 stainless steel cabinets, 2 deep freezers, and a metal prep table in the middle. We usually stored no more than 5 or 6 bodies at a time. Occasionally we'd hit capacity, but rarely for long. My workspace sat right next to the cold room, and the lighting down there was this sterile greenish tone that made everything feel slightly sick. The hallway outside had motion sensor lights that sometimes delayed when you walked past, and the buzz of the overhead fluorescence was constant. The elevator down to the basement made a loud grinding sound every time it arrived, and the cell reception was spotty at best. I didn't mind the solitude. I actually liked the peace. No patients, no doctors, no noise. But that peace started unraveling one Friday morning, around 2:15 a.m. That night started normally. I was catching up on inventory logs when I noticed a strange sound coming from the cold storage. Not a loud bang or anything dramatic, just a faint click, like metal touching metal. I assumed one of the door latches had come loose. Sometimes, if a body bag shifted slightly, the door would give under pressure and make noise. It wasn't uncommon. I grabbed my clipboard and headed into the cold room. The air hit me like always, a sharp, dry chill that instantly fogged up my glasses. I checked the storage unit labeled C4, the one closest to where I thought the sound came from. It was sealed. I gave each door a tug, just in case. All locked tight. As I turned to leave, I noticed something odd. The condensation on the inside of the small, circular windows on each door. It had been disturbed. On C4, there were faint smudge marks, like fingers had pressed against the glass. Not from the outside, from inside. I stood there for a long minute. I didn't move, just stared at it. Then I leaned in and looked closely. 5 distinct smudges. Space like a hand. I told myself someone probably brushed it earlier, while loading the body. Maybe a tech on the previous shift. Maybe it was just old residue I hadn't noticed. Still, I wrote it down in my log, took a photo with my phone, and walked out. 10 minutes later, while sitting at my desk, I heard it again. Click. Only this time it was louder. I stood up and waited. Another sound followed. This time it wasn't a click. It was more like a shuffle, like someone dragging their heels slowly across tile. The hallway lights flicked on behind me, triggered by motion. I turned, half expecting to see a doctor or maintenance worker walking by. But the hallway was empty. I walked toward the door to check, and just as I stepped into the hall, I heard it again. Click. Thud. This time, I went straight to cold storage. As soon as I opened the door, the cold seemed sharper, unnatural even. My breath fogged immediately, and my flashlight flickered once as I walked in. That's when I saw it. Cabinet C4 was open. Just slightly. My heart stopped. I hadn't unlocked anything. I know I hadn't. And the storage doors are heavy. They don't just pop open. I approached slowly, feeling my pulse in my neck. My clipboard was still in my hand, but I wasn't really thinking about documenting anymore. The door to C4 was open about 3 inches. Inside was a body bag, unzipped halfway down. Now, that's not just against protocol, it's dangerous. If a body isn't sealed properly, gases or fluids can escape and contaminate the surrounding area. I stepped closer and shined my flashlight on the tag attached to the toe. Jeffrey Dale Monroe, time of death, 1706. I remembered the name. He'd been brought in that afternoon after coding in the ICU. Cardiac arrest. No foul play, no trauma. Just a 68-year-old man with a long cardiac history. But I also remembered sealing that body myself. Fully zipped, fully latched. As I leaned closer, my light caught something that turned my stomach. The inside of the bag, near the chest area, was smeared with red fingerprints. I don't mean blood splatter. I mean deliberate prints. For long streaks and a thumb. Like someone had reached up from inside and tried to claw their way out. I zipped the bag back up, closed the door, and locked it tight. As I backed out of the cold room, I heard something behind me. 3 short knocks. From the inside of cabinet C2. I ran. Not out of the building. I ran to the security room down the hall. There's a monitor that shows the 4 security feeds from the morgue area. 1 from the hallway, 1 from inside the prep room, and 2 from the cold storage room. I rewound the feed from 2 a.m. onward, and I saw it. At 2:14 a.m., the door to C4 creaked open slowly, without anyone touching it. At 2:17 a.m., the bag inside began to move. Not just a twitch, a shifting, struggling motion like someone rolling side to side under the zipper. Then it stopped. At 2:18 a.m., the hallway lights came on, just like they had when I thought someone was behind me. But the hallway camera showed no one. Then at 2:19 a.m., this is where my stomach dropped. I watched myself walk into the frame. But there was someone already standing behind me, just barely in frame. A man in a hospital gown, barefoot, soaked down the front. He stood in the shadows as I walked right past him. Didn't see a thing. Then he turned, slowly, walked back into cold storage, and vanished. I hit pause and stared at the screen for a long time. I looked down at my radio and thought about calling someone, security, a nurse, anyone. But something told me not to. Something told me I was meant to see that footage. That whoever or whatever was there that night didn't want help. It wanted a witness. I quit 2 nights later. I stuck around long enough to finish the week, but I wouldn't go near cold storage again. I told the day staff I was feeling sick and handled paperwork upstairs. Nobody questioned it. The weirdest part, when I checked the logs on Jeffrey Dale Monroe, the body was gone. Officially, he'd been claimed by family and transported to a funeral home the next morning. But I checked with the transport team. No one had come. The logbook still showed him in storage. When I asked the day shift nurse about it, she looked confused and said, "We never had a patient by that name. You sure you're not mixing up hospitals?" I checked the intake sheet I had written. It was missing from the file. No tag. No tow label. Nothing. Just a blank space in the records where Jeffrey Monroe should have been. Now, months later, I still think about that moment I stood by cabinet C4, looking down at the half-zipped bag. I still see the fingerprints on the inside. Every once in a while, I get that same chill in random places, at home, in my car, sometimes even walking past a hospital. Like the air turns thin and my breath fogs, even when it's warm. I don't tell people this story anymore. But sometimes, when it's late and quiet and I hear a click from across the house, I wonder, what did I really let out of cold storage that night? You get used to being invisible when you clean up after people. Most don't even notice the janitor wiping floors or emptying bins, especially not at 2 a.m. at an old bus terminal where time feels frozen. I thought I'd seen everything that could happen on the night shift. Fights, drug deals, people sleeping in stalls. But one night last fall, something happened that I still can't explain. And I've never walked into a job the same way since. I worked the graveyard shift at Westgate Bus Terminal for 8 months. It was one of those rundown places no one really cared about anymore. Faded signage, flickering overhead lights, and long, gray benches that were either cracked or covered in dried gum. The place stayed open 24/7, even though by midnight, buses were few and far between. The late-night regulars were usually homeless folks looking for warmth, drivers catching a nap, or people waiting on transfers that never came. My shift started at 11 p.m. and ended at 7 a.m., and I mostly worked alone unless maintenance needed to fix a toilet or reset the boiler. I didn't mind the quiet. I kept my earbuds in, listened to music or crime podcasts, and worked my way through the checklist. Mop the waiting area, sweep platforms A through D, clean the restrooms, empty the bins, repeat. The place always felt a little eerie after the last bus rolled out around 1:30 a.m., but it was never anything I couldn't handle. That is, until the night I found the man sitting at Gate C long after the last departure. It started as a normal night. I clocked in, grabbed my cart, and got to work. Around 1 a.m., I was finishing up the men's room when I heard footsteps echoing through the terminal. That wasn't unusual. Sometimes late passengers wandered in after a night out or tried to sleep until morning. But something about these footsteps was different. Slower. Deliberate. Like whoever it was didn't have anywhere to be. I stepped out with my mop in hand and glanced across the main floor. Someone was sitting on one of the benches at Gate C. From where I stood, I could see the side of his face. Older guy, probably mid-50s, wearing a thick brown coat and a gray knit cap. He was just sitting there, not sleeping, not checking a phone, just staring forward like he was waiting for a bus. That gate had closed 2 hours earlier. I walked over, keeping my voice casual. "Hey man, last bus already rolled through. You all right?" He didn't respond. Didn't even blink. I got closer. "Sir?" Still nothing. Just that blank stare. Not at me. Not at anything really. Just out into the dim parking lot through the glass. Then slowly he turned his head. I can't explain it, but the moment his eyes met mine, every hair on my neck stood up. His expression didn't change. No smile. No acknowledgement. Just those eyes, completely empty, like looking through a broken window into a room no one lived in anymore. "Sir?" I asked again, this time a little more uneasy. Still nothing. I figured maybe he was high, or mentally unwell. So I radioed down to Marlon, the part-time security guard, to come check it out. Marlon said he'd just stepped out to the back lot for a smoke, but would be there in a minute. While I waited, I stepped back and gave the man space. That's when I noticed something. He wasn't breathing. I stared at his chest, expecting to see it rise. Even shallow, even slow. But it didn't. Not once. And then, I kid you not, he vanished. Not with a scream or a puff of smoke. I looked away for a split second when I heard the mop bucket creak behind me. And when I looked back, the bench was empty. I walked up to it. Nothing. No footprints. No belongings. Just a warm impression on the vinyl seat, like someone had been sitting there for hours. Marlon came in through the front door right after, puffing smoke and looking annoyed. I told him what I saw. He laughed, thought I was messing with him. Said it was probably some guy who slipped past me and ran off. But I wasn't joking. I checked the cameras an hour later. The monitor in the janitor closet cycles through each gate. I rewound the feed for Gate C. From 12:59 to 1:12 a.m., the bench was empty. Then suddenly, frame by frame, he was just there. One frame, empty bench. Next frame, man sitting on it. No walking. No arrival. Just appeared. And right before he vanished, 2 frames before he was gone, I saw something even worse. He looked straight into the camera, like he knew I'd be watching. That should have been enough for me to quit. But I still had hours left on my shift, and I didn't want to get fired. I kept the rest of my work close to the front lobby, near the staff room, where I could hear Marlon moving around. Around 3:40 a.m., I decided to do a quick sweep of the lower hallway near the old ticket booths. They don't use that section anymore. Everything's done through machines now. It's dark down there, with only one flickering fluorescent overhead and a row of old counters collecting dust. As I walked by, I saw movement from the corner of my eye. The reflection in the ticket booth glass. It was him, sitting behind the glass like a bored cashier. Same brown coat. Same gray cap. Just staring. But when I turned to look directly at the booth, nothing. The stool was empty, but the chair behind the glass was rocking. Slowly. I started walking backward, not turning my back on the booth. Every part of me was screaming to get out. As I turned to head back upstairs, the hallway light above me buzzed and went out. Total darkness. Then, right behind me, bare footsteps. Slow. Wet. Slapping against tile. I ran. I didn't even think. I dropped my mop and sprinted up the hallway. As I rounded the corner to the main concourse, all the lights flicked on at once. Blinding. And Marlon stood there, looking at me like I'd lost my mind. He asked if I was alright. Said he hadn't seen anyone come or go. I didn't answer, because I was staring at the benches across the room. There he was again, sitting at Gate C, waiting. I didn't go back the next night. I called in and told them I was sick. A week later, I handed in my badge and never stepped foot in that place again. But I still think about it. About him. A few months ago, I bumped into an old driver who used to do the 1:30 a.m. eastbound route out of Gate C. We got to talking, and I cautiously brought up what I saw. His face changed immediately. He asked, "Gray cap? Brown coat?" I nodded. He sighed and said, "There used to be a guy who'd ride the last bus out every Friday night. Always quiet. Never talked to anyone. One night in 2016, he had a heart attack on the platform. Died before the paramedics arrived. They said he was still clutching his ticket. He was waiting for the final stop. Still had $10 in his hand. I asked what his name was. The driver didn't know. Said nobody ever claimed the body. And the thing is, it wasn't a Friday when I saw him. It was a Monday. But I remember glancing at the floor when I first saw the bench was empty. There was a ticket stub on the tile. Old. Faded. With the words barely legible. But I swear it said, "Final stop, Westgate Terminal." Every once in a while, when I take the late bus downtown, I pass that terminal. And if I glance at Gate C, I sometimes see someone sitting alone, still waiting for a ride that never comes. I started working overnight front desk at Apex 24, a local gym just off the interstate, in October. I was 23, broke, and trying to save up for school. The pay was low, but the shift was easy. Wipe down equipment, restock towels, log any issues, and scan in members who showed up during the weird hours. The gym stayed open 24/7, but traffic slowed to a crawl between 1 and 5 a.m. I usually saw 2, maybe 3 people max per night. Sometimes none. The gym was clean, modern, and had all the usual zones: cardio, free weights, a stretching corner, and a glass-walled yoga room no one used after dark. Security cameras covered every angle, and I had access to the live feed behind the desk. After midnight, the lights dimmed a bit to save power, but they stayed on. The only entrance required a keycard scan. It felt safe, routine. That changed the night I noticed the same man in the same hoodie using the same machine, night after night, without ever scanning in. It started with something small. One night, I was reviewing camera footage around 3:30 a.m., standard protocol when things got too quiet, and noticed a guy using the seated leg press in the corner. I didn't remember hearing the door beep or seeing him on the activity log. Curious, I rewound the footage 5 minutes. Nothing. 10 minutes. Still nothing. Then suddenly, there he was. One frame, empty machine. Next frame, guy in a hoodie, black gym pants, sitting on the machine already mid-set. He didn't walk in. He didn't come from the locker room. He just appeared. I sat there for a while, staring at the footage. Told myself it was a glitch, some camera delay. Maybe the motion sensor skipped a few seconds. But the next night, same time, 3:33 a.m., he was there again. Same clothes, same machine. This time, I watched in real time. I sat at the front desk, eyes on the corner of the gym through the glass, and on the camera feed beside me. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the lights in that part of the gym flickered, just for a second, and when they steadied, he was there. Same blank expression, same slow, mechanical movements. I walked over, trying not to spook him. He didn't acknowledge me, didn't even glance in my direction. Just kept pushing the weight like he didn't notice I was standing 5 feet away. "Hey," I said quietly, "you good, man? You got a key card?" Nothing. His movements didn't slow or speed up. Just smooth, robotic reps. I stood there a bit longer before backing off and checking the logs again. No scanning. No door activity. Nothing. I told my manager the next morning. She shrugged it off, said maybe someone propped the door and forgot to sign in. But I started watching every night after that. I couldn't stop. And he kept showing up. Every night. 3:33 a.m. Like clockwork. Always the same outfit. Always the same corner. Same reps. Same machine. And here's where it got worse. On the sixth night, I decided to print the camera snapshot of his face, just to run it by the manager, maybe have her ID the guy. I paused the feed and zoomed in, but his face was blurry, not out of focus blurry. It was like the pixels refused to form a clear image. His body was crisp, the machine was clear, but his face, a swirling distortion. Even on high-res footage, it looked like someone smeared Vaseline over that part of the screen. I tried printing it anyway. The paper jammed 3 times. When it finally came out, his face was just a black square. That night, I made a stupid decision. I waited until 3:33 and walked up to him again. "Hey, what's your name?" He stopped moving. He slowly turned his head and stared at me, not in confusion, not like he'd just noticed me, but like I'd interrupted something. His eyes were wide, glassy, and completely motionless. Then he smiled, just a little, a tight, unnatural grin, and went right back to lifting. I backed away and didn't approach him again. 3 nights later, he didn't just stay in the corner. I was restocking protein bars near the vending machine when I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned and nearly jumped out of my skin. He was standing in the hallway outside the staff room. No equipment, no machine, just standing there, hands at his sides, staring. There were no footsteps, no beep at the door, no shadow passing by. I blinked, and he was suddenly 5 feet closer. No sound, no movement. I dropped the bars and stepped back toward the front desk. The hallway light above him flickered, then popped. Darkness swallowed the hallway. I ran. I locked myself in the office and pulled up the cameras. But he wasn't there. I rewound the feed. Nothing. I played it back again. No sign of him ever leaving the corner. It was like he had never moved, but I saw him. I know I did. Then the feed glitched. And for a second, every camera flickered to static except the one above the leg press. He was sitting there again, back where he started, like he'd never moved. I quit the next morning. No 2-week notice. No explanation. Just dropped my key fob in the manager's mailbox and walked away. I didn't even care about the last paycheck. Weeks passed. I tried to forget. Told myself it was exhaustion, stress, hallucinations from too many overnights and too little sleep. Then 3 weeks later, I got a call from Jordan, a buddy who still worked there. He sounded weird, quiet. Asked me if I ever had any strange experiences during my shifts. I hesitated. "You mean about the guy?" Silence. Then, yeah, that guy. Jordan told me he'd seen someone at 3:30 a.m. every night that week, sitting in the corner, same clothes, never scanning in. I told him to leave. That night. Right away. He said he would, but then paused and said something that made my blood run cold. He asked about you. What? The guy. He asked if the previous cleaner still worked here. I haven't been back. Sometimes, when I drive past the gym around 3:30 a.m., I slow down and glance through the tinted windows. And every single time, I swear I see a figure in the far corner, sitting perfectly still. Not lifting, not breathing, just waiting. And I've never stayed long enough to see if he moves. Back in 2019, I was working the graveyard shift at a telecom call center in a business complex just outside Indianapolis. It was one of those massive open-floor offices, cubicles in rows, humming fluorescent lights, worn-out carpet, and windows that never opened. We handled late-night tech support for a wireless provider. Most calls were routine, dropped signals, SIM issues, billing confusions. Nothing exciting. The team was split across 3 shifts. I was on the overnight crew. Just me, a guy named Derek from billing, and a supervisor named Monica, who mostly stayed in her office unless there was a QA issue. The weird part was that our section of the floor had 20 desks, but only 5 were ever used at night. One desk, desk number 14, was off limits. They never said why. The computer was still up, the headset was in place, but the chair was always pushed in like nobody had touched it for years. One time I asked Monica about it, and all she said was, "Just don't sit there." I didn't think much of it until the night Derek called out sick, and Monica left early because of a family emergency. That meant I was completely alone from midnight to 6 a.m. It started slow, a quiet hum from the overhead lights, the occasional call, But around 2:30 a.m., I noticed the call queue monitor. An old screen on the back wall that listed which desks were active showed desk number 14 as ready, meaning the line was open and manned. I thought it was a glitch. I even chuckled to myself and walked over to reboot the terminal. When I got there, the screen was frozen on a login screen with a name I didn't recognize. E. Marsh. The headset was off. I put it back in the cradle, hit the power button, and went back to my station. 5 minutes later, I swear I heard whispering. Not from the intercom, not from outside, but close. Like someone behind one of the cubicle walls. It was low, like someone talking under their breath. I paused the call I was on and stood up, expecting maybe Monica had returned without me noticing. "Monica?" I called out. Silence. I walked toward the break room, checked the hallway. No one. When I came back to the main floor, the light above desk number 14 was on. I hadn't touched it. The rest of the floor was dimmed as usual, but that one spotlight above number 14 glared down like a stage light. The monitor was on again. This time, the screen was black with just a single cursor blinking. Then it typed something right in front of me. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. I backed away slowly, heart hammering. I kept telling myself someone was playing a prank. Maybe IT had remote access and decided to mess with me. Maybe Derek was in on it and hadn't actually called out. But then the desk phone at number 14 rang. Not mine. Not the main helpline. Just desk number 14. One single ring. Then silence. I was staring at the phone when it rang again. 3 rings this time. Then it picked up on its own. I swear to God, the headset lifted slightly off the desk. Like someone invisible was holding it. I heard the faintest sound. Not a voice. Just breathing. Shaky, raspy breathing. Like someone trying to speak but can't get the words out. Then the monitor blinked again. "Where's Derek?" That's when I realized something wasn't right with the screen. The text, it wasn't just typed in. It was being responded to. Like a live chat. I ran to my station, yanked the LAN cable out of my PC, and tried calling Monica. No signal. The office phones had 0 dial tone, and my cell just kept saying, "no service," which never happened in that building. Suddenly, the lights across the office began to flicker, row by row, until only desk number 14 was lit. My heart was racing. I didn't know what to do. I grabbed my bag and started toward the exit, but the front security door was locked. Our key cards were only for entering, not exiting. You needed the override from Monica's office. When I turned back, I noticed something I'll never forget. A figure was sitting at desk number 14. Not a shadow, not a trick of light. A full silhouette. It was a man. His back was to me, dressed in what looked like an old call center polo. He was hunched over, headset on, fingers resting on the keyboard like he'd never moved. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even blink. I just stared. Then the figure turned halfway, just enough for me to see his face. It was pale, hollow eyes, mouth slack and open like he was stuck in mid-sentence. Then the screen blinked again. You shouldn't have ignored the last call. The overhead lights buzzed so loudly I thought they might burst. Every monitor in the office flickered on. They all showed static, except desk number 14, where that blinking cursor returned. One by one, the phones across the cubicles began ringing. Desk number 1, then number 3, then number 7, then mine. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Desk number 14's figure stood up. That chair creaked like it hadn't been moved in years. He started walking, slowly, one foot dragging slightly behind the other, toward me. But not directly. He walked row by row, desk by desk, head tilted like he was inspecting each one. I ducked under my cubicle and crawled toward the back hallway. My only option was Monica's office. Maybe there was a keycard override or a panic button. As I moved, the phone stopped ringing, all at once. Silence. Then a voice, deep, gurgling like it was underwater, spoke right behind me. "Answer the call." I shot to my feet and sprinted to Monica's office. Locked. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from the wall and smashed the glass pane of her door. Crawled through. Inside, I found her override terminal. The emergency door unlock prompt was ready. I slammed the enter key. I heard the exit door click open in the hallway. But before I could move, the lights in Monica's office turned red. Her monitor flickered on and displayed an old staff photo. I recognized Monica, a younger Derek, and someone I'd never seen before. A guy in the middle, pale skin, blank stare, labeled underneath, Eric Marsh, Tier 2 Tech Support, deceased 2015. My blood ran cold. I turned around, and there he was, standing in the broken doorway. Not a shadow, not a hallucination. He opened his mouth, and from it came the sound of dozens of phones ringing at once. I don't remember getting out, just the feeling of cold air hitting my face as I collapsed outside the building. The parking lot was empty. My phone still had no signal. I sat on the curb until sunrise, too scared to go back inside. When Monica returned that morning, I told her everything. She didn't laugh. She didn't act surprised. She just looked tired, worn out. She told me she'd submit my resignation for me. No questions asked. I never went back. A few weeks later, I got a call from Derek. He'd quit 2 months earlier, but no one told me. Said he saw something at desk number 14. Someone who answered his calls before he even dialed them. He'd warned Monica. She didn't believe him then. Maybe she did now. I tried to research Eric Marsh. Found an old obituary. He died in the office. Heart attack. Overnight shift. They say he was on a call when it happened, but the line never disconnected. The customer stayed on for 2 hours, just listening to static and shallow breathing. I know what I saw. I know it wasn't a dream or sleep deprivation.